Hello there guys, I'm Unstable Voltage and welcome to my new video on EU4 using the Common Sense DLC expansion. And in this video we are going to be talking about the three main ways to make money in EU4, which is taxes, production and trade. There are a few other ways that you can make money, such as there are some random events that will give you money. You can also get money from other nations if in a time of peace as part of the peace deal, war reparations, things like that, looting other provinces during war. But those are things that we'll talk about when we actually get into warfare. What I'm going to talk about is the three main ways of getting money. Now, getting money is very, very important in EU4. It's used for a lot of things. It's used for the construction of buildings. It is used for the training and the retaining of regiments for your army. It is used for the construction, the maintenance and the upgrade of ships. It is also used for hiring and maintaining your advisors. And probably most importantly, it is used for mercenaries, which can make or break you in a war, particularly if you have very little or no manpower. Being able to hire mercenaries to fight for you can make the difference between winning or losing a war, as well as, of course, being able to produce buildings on the map as well. So I don't want to go into too much specific detail about the way these three things work, because there's quite a lot to it and it gets very complicated. I think it'd be quite difficult to try and explain it all and have anybody sort of take it all in. So we're just going to go through the basics of the three incomes and how they work and how you can affect them, how you can maximize them, how you can get the most money out of your nation. So you can see at a glance on the screen how much money you have at the top here. This is the amount of ducats you have in the treasury. Now, the little blue positive sign or the little red negative sign will tell you at a glance whether or not you are losing or making money each month. And a quick mouse over the tooltip tells us that we are making 1.94 ducats per month. And we get a breakdown. We have taxation, production and trade, which are our three incomes. And then we've got our army maintenance, fleet maintenance and our fort maintenance, which is all outgoing money. So let's go them through in order. You can actually find a little bit more information if you click on the shield and go to the economy tab, which is number 3. And again, you see those three figures broken down here again, and it is still the monthly fee that you see. Used to be yearly, I believe, but in Common Sense it's now been changed to monthly. And by mousing over each of these, you can actually see where all of your individual taxes are coming from. So they're not broken down individually, because as you can see right at the bottom it says 2.64 ducats from others. And that's simply because some of them, if they make below a certain amount, they don't really appear on the list. But all of my highest earners, mainly London that is, give me a certain amount of tax each month. And also because I'm an independent nation, that gives me +1 base tax per month anyway. And tax, production and trade are collected on the 1st of every month. So on the 1st of every month, you will get a tick where you get all of that money come in. And in fact, if I just go ahead and unpause the game, let me just go and whack the game up to speed 5. If you just actually watch the date timer, we're getting up towards the 22nd of April. Let's just slow it down. And actually just watch my provinces closely. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit just to make this a little bit easier to see. But as we actually flick over to the 1st of May, you should see a lot of little yellow numbers appear over all of the provinces. So here we go. Let's wait for it. And it didn't actually show there, but you saw the trade. It depends on how much you're zoomed in as to whether or not you see it. But that was basically the money coming in. If you actually have a look now, we've gone up to 280 ducats now. It's actually a decimal. It's 280.16, which you can't see unless you mouse over. So let's talk about those individual things and where they come from. Well, first of all, we've got our taxation. What is taxation? Where does that come from? Well, the amount of tax that you get from any province comes from its base tax. So if we actually go ahead and click on a province, so if you left click on any province, it will bring up the province view. Let's look at London, because London is our capital. And we can see here, it tells us in this little box what our tax, production and our total is here. Trade is down at the bottom, so we'll talk about that later. So if we mouse over tax for London, we can see that London's base tax is 0.66 ducats per month, which gives us 8 ducats per year and its tax income efficiency is 110%, and that's basically because it's a core and it's a city, which means it belongs to us and it is not a colony. So we get the full 100% tax from it, and it has a seat in Parliament, which is something you're not going to see on everything. That's something that's pretty specific to the constitutional monarchies and constitutional republics. So most provinces you'll find will have 100% tax modifier. So this is the monthly tax income from this province. Now, what we can do here, I think they need to update that tooltip because it says it will generate a yearly income of 0.73 ducats. I think that's actually monthly income of 0.73 ducats that they haven't updated. So you've got these three options here. These are the new things that are added in Common Sense, where you can actually spend your administrative, diplomatic and military power points to be able to develop a province. It's obviously known as province development. And the first one here, this is basically your admin tech, and this increases base tax. If you actually read there, I can spend 53 administrative power to improve the base tax by 1, which would give London an extra 0.09 ducats per month. It also increases local spy defence as well, but more importantly, it would give us a little bit of extra trade power. Let me get that right. It would give us a little bit of extra base tax. I'm thinking too far ahead. So if you want to increase how much money you make in taxes, one of the first things you can do is spend some administrative points on a province to increase the amount of base tax that it is making. So that's the first way to increase your taxes. The second way is to go ahead and build a building within that province. Now, I can't really build any extra buildings at the moment because I haven't unlocked the appropriate tech for them. But if we just go and have a look at the buildings tab here, and we can see some of the buildings that are available. The main ones that you're going to want to look at here are the taxation buildings, which is the temple and then the cathedral, and one replaces the other. So basically, building a temple in a province will give you an extra 40% to the tax modifier. Building a cathedral, which will replace the temple, will give you a 60% to the tax modifier. So obviously you can't build these until you've got enough money to build them, and you also have to have the appropriate technology level. You do get the temple at admin tech level 4, so it is one of the first buildings that you get beyond the marketplace. The cathedral comes much later. But you definitely want to try and build these as early as possible, particularly in your high tax value provinces, because they will pay for themselves as time goes on. So the tax itself is a relatively simple thing. It's basically the base tax of a province, which can be increased by spending admin points to develop the admin level of the province, with some multipliers thrown in, which you can improve by going in and building a taxation building within the province. You can also have a look down on the map modes at the economical map mode button, and that will actually show you at a glance which are your highest tax earning provinces. So you can see the ones in green are giving us the higher base tax, and as we go down, the ones in red are giving us the lower base tax. So now we've covered tax, let's go on to the next one, which is production. And there's a handy little production map mode that you can see, which is this one down here. This is the trade goods map mode. If we actually go ahead and click on that, you can see the different types of trade goods that are produced all over the world. There's a lot of different trade goods. You can see instantly, if we're looking at England, which is where we are, we've got grain, we've got fish, we have iron, we have copper, that is cloth, we have wool as well. There's a few more things around. There is naval supplies, there's salt, there's wine. What else do we have around here? There's gold. If you look in Tyrol, the mines of Austria, we've got more salt down here as well. I think there's a few other little random trade goods dotted around. Probably one or two that I've missed. Furs is another one. So there are a few different trade goods around. You'll also find as well, particularly if we start moving down towards Africa, you start getting things like sugar. There's also slaves. There's spices. There's ivory. So there are quite a few different trade goods around. I've also got silk as well. There's coffee. And what you will find is you do get random events that pop in the game that actually increase or decrease the value of a specific trade good. We've got cotton in there as well. So there you can see all the different things that are being produced, and all of these things have a different value. So if we go ahead and have a look at Cornwall here, let's just get rid of the buildings tab because we don't need that. So let's get rid of the buildings tab. So if we go and look down here at the bottom, now this actually is the trade window, but this actually shows us what goods are being produced in this particular province. And it shows us that copper is being produced here, and the current base price for copper is 3 ducats. If we go over here and have a look at production, we can see that we are basically, that our trade value that this province is giving us is 0.26 ducats, 0.26 ducats per month. And that comes from things like production efficiency and stuff like that. But as it says, this is a monthly production income of the province. It will generate a yearly income of 3.21. So the actual amount depends on the base production and value of the trade goods in the province. So if you actually look at that and work it all out, that if you take 3 ducats per year and add on 7.4%, add on 10%, and then subtract the minus 2.6% for the local autonomy, it would come out to around about 3.21. So the value of the trade goods that we are producing actually increases how much money that we get. So the more valuable trade goods that you have, and you can't change these, by the way, a certain province produces a certain trade good. It only produces one type of good, and it will always produce that one type of good. Some are more valuable than others. For example, grain is probably one of the lowest value ones. Fish is a little bit more expensive. Gold has a base value of 3 at the current point. Sorry, copper. If we look at gold, gold currently doesn't have a base value for some reason. And there are some places that we just cannot click on and see. But yeah, most things between about 2 and 4 as their actual their base value. So we can go and look at Wessex as well, and we can also see that Wessex here is producing fish, and fish value is 2.50, which gives us a total of 3.3. And again, that's plus 10% from production efficiency and plus 10% from technology. It doesn't have the negative modifier, and there's a higher production efficiency. Why is that? Well, if you actually look at this second button in Provincial Development, this is the one that you can spend diplomatic power on. Spending diplomatic power improves production, which is basically your production efficiency, because you produce a certain amount of these goods. If you actually have a look down here at the bottom under trade, you can see the trade value, which is 3. So the trade value, the value of the goods is 2.5, which we can see here. That's how much the fish is worth. And local goods produced is 1.2. So our base production is 1.2, which means we get 1.2 times the value of the fish. Because we're not... This is like... Imagine one fish was 2 ducats 50. So if we were producing one fish, we would get 2 ducats 50, but we're producing 1.2 fish. So that means we earn around about 3 ducats. And we've also got better production efficiency here as well. If you actually look at total development, that is trade. Yes, it's not too important there, but spending your diplomatic power here will actually give you more production. So it gives you extra monthly production income. It gives you more local goods produced. So if you want to increase the money that you are getting from trade goods, then spending diplomatic power to improve production is a good bet. But that's something that you want to spend in provinces that have higher value trade goods. Now, we haven't talked about autonomy yet, but autonomy, which is this figure that you see here, this does have a knock-on effect on things like your trade power and production efficiency. As you can see down there in the modifiers, we're getting a negative 2.6 to production and trade because we do have autonomy. Autonomy is something we'll cover later on, but it is worth bearing in mind if you're going to spend power points to upgrade a province. Have a quick look and just see if there is autonomy, because if a province has a lot of autonomy, you'll probably find you get very, very little difference upgrading it until the autonomy has gone away. So that's basically how the production works. But what production also does is it puts the value of these production goods into trade as well. So if we go ahead here and actually have a look at the trade map mode, and we covered all these map modes briefly in the previous video when we looked at map modes, but what you can see here is the entire world is broken up into several trade nodes, and each trade node is a different colour. The major nodes are also represented on the map by these larger panels. These represent points where trade either funnels into or funnels through. So if we actually look at this trade node here, this is the English Channel trade node, and this is what's called an end node. Basically, all trade that goes into the English Channel stays in the English Channel. It is then collected by the people who have trade power here. None of it flows outwards. So if we go ahead and click on London, for example, because London is in the English Channel trade node, which is this sort of orange colour here. So London's in the English Channel trade node. If we look down here, you can see this little green pie chart, and it says 100% of the ducats in the English Channel stays in the trade node because none of it goes out. If we take a look a little bit further north, we can see we have the North Sea trade node. Now you'll actually see there's 2 arrows feeding in, but there's also 2 arrows feeding out. So some of the trade is flowing down into the English Channel, and some of the trade is flowing down and going into the Lubeck trade node. If we were to click on Yorkshire, which is in the North Sea trade node, because if we zoom out, we can see the blue bit is the North Sea. If we go and click on Yorkshire, we can actually see that the pie chart is very, very different. It says 35% of the ducats stay in the trade node, which means that the other 65% of the ducats are actually going out. Now, some of that 65% is going to Lubeck, and some of that 65% is going down here into the English Channel. Now you can get more information on any of these trade nodes by clicking the little button here next to it, or you can also get the information by clicking on the trade node directly. Going in either of those ways takes you to the same screen. So basically, when you get this little pop-up screen for a trade node, you'll see a number of different things. You've got some little tabs on the left-hand side. Tabs on the left are trade nodes that feed into the current node. So these arrows coming in, one of those is coming from the Gulf of St. Lawrence, which we haven't discovered yet because it's over in the Americas. And another one is coming from the White Sea, which is the trade node that is up the arrow. If we just follow this arrow all the way upstream, zoom out a little bit because it's easier, and eventually it takes us to this one here, which is the White Sea trade node. Of course, you can also get to these these nodes by just clicking on the tabs, and you will follow the trade upstream. So if we just go back to the node we were on, which was the North Sea trade node, on the right hand side you've got the tabs of the nodes that it flows into. So if we click on Lubeck, you can see that Lubeck flows into the English Channel. If we just click on the English Channel, it takes us straight there. So even though some of the trade that is coming out of the North Sea goes into Lubeck, anything that isn't collected from Lubeck comes back into the English Channel anyway. So what does all this mean, and what is its purpose? How does it work? Well, it's all down to something called trade power. First of all, you will always have a home node. This is a trade node that you collect from by default. Now, normally your trade node is your main trade port is normally your capital city. It can be moved. Now, the easiest way to find which one your home trade port is when you actually go and look on the trade map, you'll see one of these trade nodes actually has this little crate symbol above it. And like this one here, and if I mouse over it, it says main trading port. Your main trading port is where you collect trade. You can collect in other places, but there you will get a trade power penalty. So if I click on London, we can see here that London is my main trading port. What I could do is I could click on another province and I could make it into make that into my main trade port. Now, there's absolutely no point in moving your trade point between 2 provinces in the same node, and as a result, it won't let you do it. But if I wanted to move my main trade node into the North Sea, I could move it here to Yorkshire. It would cost me diplomatic power, which I currently don't have, but that would move my main trade port. Now, obviously, I want to keep my main trade port here because I automatically collect money from my home trade port. And because the English Channel here is an end node, none of the money goes out. Now, you'll also see this figure here that says what my current trade power is. My current trade power is almost 216, but it's rounded down on the node, which is 45% of the total power in this node, which basically means anyone who has any land within this trade node has trade power there. But because I have 45% of the trade power, I collect 45% of the money that ends up in that particular province. Now, you can increase your trade power in a couple of different ways. First of all, every province has something called provincial trade power. If we actually look down here at the bottom, you can see where we get our trade power from. Some of it comes from mercantilism. Some of it comes from our total development, which is actually here. So if we look at the total development, so this isn't gained by spending points in any particular provincial development. This is by spending points in any of the provincial development. So if you spend admin, diplo or military points improving a province, it improves the overall development, and it's the overall development that improves the trade power of the provincial trade power of a province. So going back to buildings, because one thing I did miss when I was actually talking about the production, just going back a moment, if we look at buildings, we've actually got buildings for production. So there's a workshop building and a counting house building which improve the local production efficiency by 50% and by 100%. And there are also these manufacturers. Now, manufacturers are quite expensive, and you can only produce the right type of manufacturer dependent on what particular trade good is being produced in that province. But building a manufacturer will give you an extra +1 goods produced in that province. So you can build taxation buildings to increase the tax that you get from a province. You can build production buildings to increase your production efficiency, and manufacturers to increase the number of goods produced in a province. But then you've also got the trade buildings. So the trade buildings, the marketplace, the trade depot and the stock exchange give you extra local trade power, which is provincial trade power. So if I actually went in and built any of those buildings in these provinces, assuming I had the tech and money to do so, it would increase my trade power. And increasing my trade power basically means that I take a bigger cut of the money. There's also a couple of other things that you can do to improve your trade power. First of all, you can embargo other people who control trade within that node. Now, embargoing somebody reduces their trade power, but at the same time, you get the trade power reduction yourself, unless they are your rival. And this is something that I mentioned when I did my allies and rivals video. So if you embargo a rival, then you don't get a penalty to your own trade. If you ever try and embargo somebody who isn't your rival, you will get a pop-up notification warning you that you have a costly embargo. Unfortunately, the game doesn't warn you if you're not embargoing a rival. So always make sure that you embargo your rivals, because it hurts them by reducing their trade power, and you manage to keep all of yours. Now, some provinces do have some special things going on. If you actually look, you'll see some provinces have these little icons on them. Some of them say centres of trade, and some of them say things like estuaries and stuff like that. So if we look at London, for example, which is one of ours, London has the Thames estuary, and it is a coastal centre of trade. So the fact that it's a coastal centre of trade gives us a cheaper local development cost, it gives us a better naval force limit, but it also gives us an extra 20 local trade power. And the fact that it's got the Thames estuary also gives us +10 local trade power. So London is really, really powerful. If you can see, we have 215 or 215.9 trade power in the English Channel, and 67.9 of that is all coming from London. It's a shame London only produces grain, but the money that goes into this node is coming from upstream and also from the value of the goods that are being produced within that node. Now, another useful thing that you have is merchants. Normally you only start with a couple, but you do generally get more as the game goes on. Particularly if you start increasing your technologies, because you get things that increase the number of merchants that you get, and basically moving merchants around and stuff is very, very useful. But we'll talk more about this in a later video, but I just really want to go through what merchants do. So there are two things that you can do with a merchant. You can send a merchant to a trade node and have them collect from that node, or you can send a merchant to a trade node and have them forward trade. So what we've got going on here is we've got a merchant who is currently placed in the North Sea trade node. And as you can see, there are two little boxes here. And these boxes indicate where the trade is going. Now this one is ticked because we're currently steering trade downwards into the English Channel. If I was to go and tick this button here, we'd now be steering trade this way. So obviously normally when you place a merchant in one of these nodes, it automatically ticks the right one for you, normally, and the trade goes in the right direction. But you may want to manage these yourself if you want to send trade in a particular direction for any specific reason. So you can see that having a merchant here allows me to actually push some trade downstream. We'll have another merchant as well who is located here, and he's in the Champagne trade node, and once again you can see this little red tick. He is forwarding trade and pushing it out back up to the English Channel. We don't need to have a merchant here because we are collecting from it automatically. Now you can have a merchant collect if you want from your home trade node, and you'll get like an extra 10% bonus if you do, but you generally find that the merchants are much better used if they're forwarding trade from somewhere else. Now it's worth bearing in mind you can collect trade from another trade node, but if you do try and collect trade from a foreign trade node, you actually take a little bit of a trade penalty. So again, more often than not, you want to make sure that your merchants are always forwarding trade. If you want to recall a merchant at any time, you can right click on them on the outliner and bring them home, or you can go into any one of the trade nodes and you have the option to recall the merchant, or you can switch their mission. So currently he is transferring trade power. I can say to him collect from trade if I want. I can also go into another trade node and I can say either collect from trade or transfer trade power, click one of those and then tell it which merchant I want to send there. So you get a lot of important information on these node screens, such as how much money is incoming, how much of it is local, how much of it is going out, so that gives us a total. So as we can see, 100% of the money coming into the English Channel trade node is retained. If we actually go and have a look at the North Sea, we can see that only that 35% of it is retained. So out of the total sort of almost 4 ducats coming in, only 1.35 ducats is retained, the other 2.46 is going out, and we can see the breakdown who has the trade power there. Lots of useful information down here at the bottom. I won't go into all of it, but it basically allows you to sort by different things, such as who has the most money here, who has the most trade power, who has the most provincial trade power, light ships and merchants, which I'll go into in just a second. There's also a little thing here that shows about how many pirates are there, and privateering is something that I'll mention in a moment. And you can also see that it tells us how much money we are transferring down into the English Channel. So that's the reason you have your merchant, so you can sort of steer this trade in the direction that you want it to go. So another way that you can increase trade is with the use of light ships. If you have any light ships, like we do here, we have 11 light ships, you have a couple of options for them. One of the first options you have is this one here. It says Protect Trade. If you click on that button, you'll have the option of a number of trade nodes that you can send them to patrol. Now, you can only patrol a trade node if you already have some trade power there, or if you have a merchant there. So if I wanted to send ships to protect trade down here in Venice, for example, I'd have to send a merchant there first. I can't send a merchant there at the moment because it isn't within range. As you can see, must be in range. Current range is 220, and our max range is 200. That is something that's actually affected by our diplomatic technology, because you can see here in the diplomatic technology we have trade range. As you can see, at level 4 it goes up by 10, at level 5 it's another 20, level 8 it's another 10, level 10 it's another 20, so on and so forth. Also, this increases our production efficiency as we tech up here, our trade efficiency, sorry, as we tech up here as well. So teching up in Diplo is very, very important for trade. It'll also allow you to eventually build better light ships. And better light ships will give you more trade power. As you can see, currently I only have the barks, and the barks only give me a trade power of 2. When we can upgrade to the next type of ship, it will have more trade power. So you can send light ships to protect trade in any trade node that you already have trade power in. If you don't have trade power there, then you have to send a merchant there first, then you'll be able to send ships. Bear in mind, it does have to be within your ship's trade range. So if you mouse over any of these, it will tell you roughly how much money extra you will get by sending your ships there. Bear in mind, it does cost money to maintain the ships, so having a huge fleet of trade ships is going to cost you money, so you have to do a little bit of maths to work out whether or not it's going to be worth sending them there. Most of the time, it is worth it. We only have 11 ships here. We've got 45% of the trade power in the English Channel node there. If I tell these guys to protect trade in the English Channel, and then I go and unpause the game, it probably won't tick up until the end of the month, but we can speed things along a little bit. And as you can see now, it's actually gone up to 48%. So by sending our light ships to patrol the trade here, it's actually gaining us a little bit more money. Now, another thing that you can do with light ships, and they've all just docked here to repair, because they will take damage as they move around. You have a few other options that you can actually do here. And one of the things that you can actually do is send it on a privateer mission. If you click on a privateer mission, you will basically move your fleet under the Jolly Roger. So nobody will know that they belong to you, because it creates like a sort of a pseudo nation, the pirate nation. And basically you can send privateers to a trade node even if you have no trade power there. As long as it's within range, it still has to be within range of your ships. But basically, if there's a trade node that you don't have any trade power in, let's say for example down here in the Sevilla trade node, I don't have any trade power here at all. But if the Sevilla trade node was in range, and I doubt it is probably just outside of my ship's range, I assume that's going to be the case. No, Sevilla is there. So as you can see, I have 0 trade power in Sevilla, but I could go ahead and send privateers to Sevilla. So it would actually give me trade power in Sevilla, and it will increase our value from 0 to 0.43 ducats. Now obviously it does cost us fleet maintenance, so we'd be making a loss. But at the same time, I'd also be taking money away from Castile, not to mention Portugal and Granada and all the other places that are in this node, but basically I'm stealing trade from them, and that hurts them. It might not necessarily benefit me all that much, but it does hurt them. They are also my rival, so I'd gain power projection from stealing from my rival, but that's going into quite a bit more of the complexity of the trade system. So basically, all you really need to know, the 3 ways to make money. First of all is from tax. Spend admin points to increase the base tax value in provinces, and also build the tax buildings to increase the tax multiplier. Also keep your eye out for the local autonomy. You'll get better tax, production and trade from places with lower local autonomy. Your production is based on the trade goods that are coming out of particular provinces. You can increase the amount of money that you make from production by building the production buildings and manufactories, and from spending diplomatic power to increase base production. And then finally you've got the trade. Trade comes from the amount of trade power you have in a specific node. You can improve that with things such as mercantilism. You can improve that by building trade buildings within provinces. You can also improve it by upgrading the provinces using any of the provincial development buttons, because it goes on total development to increase the trade power. And you can also increase your trade power by sending light ships on a trade mission, or you can send them on a privateering mission down to a trade node that you don't have any trade power in. So it sounds quite complicated, and to be fair, it's one of the parts of the game that I focus on the least. I tend to put my merchants in some provinces and let them get on with their thing, but you can make an awful lot of money doing it, especially if you've got a nation that has a couple of these centres of trade. Look at Holland, for example. Holland have a centre of trade in Antwerp, and Holland have a centre of trade here in Holland itself. If you actually look at the size of Antwerp is currently collared by Flanders at the moment, but normally Antwerpen ends up belonging to Holland before too long. But even if you consider the size of Holland here compared to the size of Great Britain in this node, if we actually go back and look at the trade node and actually go and find Holland here, you can see that Holland still have a fairly decent amount of trade power. Their trade power is 92.4. So it's only about a third of what mine is, but they're so much smaller than I am. If we actually go ahead and have a look at the income, we're taking the most money out of here at 6.36 ducats. Holland's taking out 2.66. So even though Holland is a lot smaller than us, they're still making about half the amount of money that we are from trade. So trade can be really, really important, especially for some nations. But that's basically how you make the most of your money in EU4. So I hope that you have found this tutorial useful. Not too sure what the next video is going to be yet. We'll probably look at making some claims and reasons for going to war on our enemies, because now we've sorted out how to set your rivals, how to get your allies, and how to make a decent income. We'll start talking about building up an army and getting ready to go for war. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. Hope you still enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye for now.